My mother-in-law was poisoned by those short K-dramas about domineering elderly CEOs who insisted on working as a cleaner at the hotel where I was employed. She believed a lonely old CEO was waiting for her to arrive and rescue him. The result? She was fired for laziness and harassing guests. But she blamed me, convinced I had secretly sabotaged her, causing her to miss her chance to marry into high society. So she put mango juice, something I'm severely allergic to, into my food and hid my allergy medication. After I died, my husband helped his mother cover up the truth, claiming everything was an accident due to my carelessness, allowing her to escape justice. Thankfully, I was reborn. This time, I'll see what blind CEO would fall for such a disheveled, unkempt old woman. During dinner, my mother-in-law, Madame Lan, suddenly brought up her desire to work as a cleaner at my hotel, asking me to put in a word with the hiring manager. Hearing this decision, my husband, Julian, immediately looked displeased. "Mom, just stay home and rest. Being a cleaner is exhausting, and the pay is low. Our family isn't so broke that you need to work." Madame Lan retorted, "What do you know? I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it to marry into a prominent family. In those dramas I watch, all the CEOs fall for kind-hearted women who work as cleaners. Do you remember Auntie Liu? She even found a young, rich man. I'm no less than her. If she found a young CEO, it shouldn't be hard for me to find an old one." Julian couldn't fathom why his mother's fictional CEOs had such peculiar taste. But under her persuasion, he gradually started to believe her. Their conversation didn't surprise me at all, because the exact same thing had happened in my previous life. Initially, I strongly opposed Madame Lan working at the hotel because she was truly too unhygienic. She only bathed once every few months, washed her hair every 2 weeks, her clothes were full of dandruff, and she only changed bed sheets and blankets on Lunar New Year. Her clothes were worn until they were shiny. How could I trust someone like that to be a cleaner? Wouldn't it just be a matter of time before guests complained? But Julian kept persuading me, saying, "Work is work, habits are habits. Once she starts working, she'll follow the hotel's rules." I thought, fine, let her have something to do to keep her busy and stop tormenting me at home. Little did I know, she might not have the energy to torment me at home, but she constantly caused trouble at work. Not only did she frequently disappear during working hours, but she also arbitrarily entered guest rooms to ask questions, even offering companionship services. As the head of housekeeping, I received countless complaints from guests, and my work performance was even questioned because of her. Eventually, Madame Lan was fired from the hotel, but she believed I was jealous and deliberately sabotaged her, which led to her causing my death. Watching Madame Lan and Julian, this mother and son, still dreaming of a glamorous life, I just wondered why I hadn't realized my husband was such an idiot before. With her sallow face, fierce slanting eyes, and acerbic personality, what CEO would ever want her? Forget a CEO, even a CEO's bodyguard wouldn't spare her a glance. Right. Although Madame Lan constantly claimed she was the village flower in her youth and was sure to catch the eye of an aging CEO, just looking at her current appearance was enough for me to know she couldn't have been that beautiful even in her youth. And even if we took 10,000 steps back and assumed Madame Lan was telling the truth about being a great beauty in her youth, no CEO would ever see it now. As for her story about Auntie Liu, that woman's boasting was even more exaggerated than Madame Lan's by several degrees. Her so-called finding a CEO was either a fictional character or a fabrication of both person and identity. I have been reborn once, and naturally I won't repeat the mistakes of my past life. Not only do I need to stay away from them, but I also need to make them pay. However, I can't immediately demand a divorce right now. I need time to deal with the marital assets with Julian. For years after we married, he used starting a business as an excuse, never earning a dime, but extracting a good deal of money from me. If I were to divide the assets now, I wouldn't get much. But Julian's old family home in the countryside is about to be compensated for demolition. I absolutely must wait until that money is in hand. I have to seize this opportunity to reclaim everything I've lost. Madame Lan and Julian reached an agreement, then together they came to persuade me, asking me to put in a good word with HR so Madame Lan could get the job. I pretended to be surprised and said, "Mom, if you marry into a rich family, that would be wonderful. Julian and I wouldn't have to work so hard anymore. Our future all depends on you now. Madame Lan bashfully replied, "Money isn't important, darling. I just want to experience sweet love." Older CEOs are very doting on their wives. I thought to myself, if she only wants someone who treats her well, it doesn't have to be a CEO. Like Mr. Su Dakyang in the drama All Is Well, he was very good to Auntie Kai. But I didn't expose Madame Lan. Instead, I seriously discussed the matter. "Mom, I don't think you're really suited to work at our hotel." Hearing this, Madame Lan's face immediately changed. "Kiera, what do you mean? Aren't you secretly trying to marry a CEO yourself, which is why you're deliberately stopping me?" Julian chimed in. "Kiera, you're a married woman. Get rid of those silly notions or I won't be polite." I smiled and said, "I have such a good husband like you. How could I ever be unfaithful? I have a reason for not wanting Mom to work at our hotel. If Mom wants to marry a CEO, she should choose a high-end hotel. Our hotel isn't prestigious enough to catch the eye of those CEOs. Many guests here even come with discount vouchers. Think about it, Mom, do truly rich people use vouchers? It's best if you go to the New Asia Hotel. All the new guests there are wealthy." Madame Lan said, "But I don't know anyone there and I'm afraid I won't know the ropes." I immediately continued, "You're so capable, Mom. You'll do well anywhere. You have to believe in yourself." Julian also encouraged her. "That's right, Mom. You need to find someone truly rich. The people at our hotel aren't even as rich as you." Thanks to Julian and my combined encouragement, Madame Lan finally decided to apply to the New Asia Hotel. "Apply," they said, but cleaning jobs were short-staffed everywhere. Sure enough, Madame Lan was quickly hired as a cleaner at the New Asia Hotel. But just like in my past life, she hadn't changed her nature. She was lazy, didn't work properly, harassed guests, and argued with management. The only difference was that this time, no one was there to shield her. And the guests at the New Asia Hotel were all people of high status. When harassed by an elderly woman like Madame Lan, they immediately called the police. As a result, Madame Lan was not only fired but also detained for 5 days. After being released, she was distraught for several days, mumbling constantly, "Those people are blind, they can't see how good I am." I just wanted to say, they're not blind, that's why they don't want you. However, Madame Lan didn't stay depressed for too long. She quickly found a new direction in life because I had introduced her to a newly released short drama, My Second Husband is a Tycoon. The film was about a middle-aged female protagonist who went on a blind date and met a CEO pretending to be poor. They married, and then the CEO revealed his true identity and led his wife to face all the people who had once looked down on them. After watching the short film, Madame Lan was incredibly inspired and immediately went online to a dating website and registered an account. She even thought up a script. The CEO's ex-wife left him, taking all his money, making him believe that every woman who appeared around him was only after his money. So, the CEO disguised himself as a poor man to find a woman who didn't love money. After hearing Madame Lan's wild imagination, Julian even added, "The CEO was once deeply hurt. Young girls wouldn't understand his feelings. Only someone his age could soothe the wounds in his heart." Watching the two of them chat enthusiastically, I truly thought they should go write short film scripts. Earning money that way was more plausible than Madame Lan marrying into high society. They truly were mother and son, their dreamy natures were identical. After devising her new plan, Madame Lan began her journey of blind dates. She openly stated very simple requirements, fearing that if she asked for too much, the disguised CEO would see her as materialistic. But in reality, her demands were extremely high. Fearing suspicion, she didn't dare to ask too directly, so she and Julian spent several days creating a list of 100 questions to find a disguised CEO, specially designed to track down hidden tycoons. Unexpectedly, Madame Lan actually snagged an uncle named Mr. Quinn, who worked as a food delivery driver. But in Madame Lan's eyes, that was just his fake identity. The reason she chose Mr. Quinn among thousands was that she had learned a golden lesson from those short films. Disguised CEOs come in two types, either an uncle around 50 who works in delivery, or a young man in his 20s who works as a mover. Since Madame Lan only had one son, Julian, and didn't want any more children, she decisively ruled out the younger men, choosing an uncle to avoid being pressured to have more kids. That statement touched Julian so much that he even cried in his sleep that night. "Mom, you're the one who treats me the best." Julian and I met through a matchmaker. The referrer was a relative on my side who claimed to have known Julian's father for a long time, saying he was a good man and thus believing his son would be too. At the time, I didn't consider IQ at all. Who knew the IQ of both mother and son would be enough to bring tears to one's eyes? Before long, Madame Lan and Mr. Quinn were passionately in love. He also frequently appeared at my house. Looking at him, I immediately understood why Madame Lan chose him among so many. With his elegant and dapper appearance, he looked more like a CEO than many real tycoons. If I weren't absolutely certain that no CEO could be blind enough to like Madame Lan, I would have suspected she actually struck gold. Coincidentally, Mr. Quinn came to my hotel to deliver food. I saw a colleague greet him and curiously asked more, only to learn they were old neighbors. Seizing the opportunity, I asked about his past. It turned out that when he was young, Mr. Quinn lived off his mother. When she died, he lived off his wife. He idled all day, not even bothering to clean up spilled cooking oil. His wife worked herself to death from exhaustion. After his wife passed away, he continued to live off various other women. With a handsome face and a way with words, he still had a market. But now that he was older, wealthy ladies preferred younger men, so he had to support himself by working as a delivery driver. I heard he recently found a new girlfriend and was about to leech off someone again. I wondered what kind of woman had such a peculiar taste, old enough to be resting, yet still seeking out a freeloading daddy to make life harder. My colleague asked, "Oh, why are you suddenly asking about him?" "Do you know him?" I replied. "My mother-in-law is his new girlfriend." My colleague looked at me with an expression of profound pity, as if offering me 100,000 points of sympathy. But inwardly I thought, no need, the more I know what kind of person Mr. Quinn is, the happier I am. I calculated, only 3 more months until the demolition compensation for Julian's family home would be transferred to the account. A bright future was beckoning me. Knowing Mr. Quinn's true identity, I had even more patience to watch their farce. And I had to admit, Mr. Quinn truly knew how to sweet-talk. The honeyed words Mr. Quinn spoke made Madame Lan so overjoyed that she lost her bearings. But only Julian started to feel strange. "Mom, you and Uncle Quinn have known each other for over 2 months now. Why haven't you seen him give you any real gifts?" Madame Lan replied confidently. "What do you know? If he gave me expensive things now, wouldn't his identity be exposed? If it were that easy to be discovered, would he even be available for me? Those little vixen women would have snatched him up long ago. Don't worry, it's just like in the dramas. Once he feels my genuine affection, he'll definitely tell me everything." Then she added, "Kiera, isn't that right?" The story unexpectedly fell to me, who had been sitting quietly, enjoying the drama. Of course, I had to play along. I nodded in agreement. "That's right, Mom. Lately, I've also watched quite a few CEO dramas and done a lot of research. CEOs are fed up with fake women. They only like pure, kind girls like an innocent white flower. You absolutely mustn't try to probe Uncle Quinn, and don't ask too many questions about his work or money. I believe that given enough time, he will definitely give you a surprise." Hearing my flattery, Madame Lan was extremely pleased and grandly announced a decision. She wanted to move in with Mr. Quinn. Julian excitedly asked, "Mom, are you moving into a villa?" Madame Lan immediately scolded. "Are you stupid? Old Mr. Quinn is still pretending to be poor right now. How can he let me move into a villa?" To hide his identity, he even deliberately found a shabby house and told me it was his. I took one look and knew immediately it was a newly moved into place. The furniture wasn't complete, and he wasn't even familiar with the layout of the house. I secretly thought, "You're truly overthinking things. Mr. Quinn really does live in a shabby house because that's where he was born. It's just that in recent years, he's been latching onto wealthy women, so he rarely comes home." Julian worriedly asked, "Mom, are you planning to move into that shabby place?" Madame Lan replied, "Initially, I intended to cultivate my feelings with old Mr. Quinn, but then I thought, you'll have to inherit his fortune later, so you're the one who needs to get close to him now. So I told him to move into our house instead. Our place is spacious and will help him feel the warmth of a family." Julian immediately cooperated. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll definitely make Uncle Quinn feel the warmth of our family and our sincerity." And so, Mr. Quinn officially moved into my house, becoming a family member. Not long after he moved in, Julian couldn't stand it anymore. He complained to me that Mr. Quinn is truly too much. He's mixed up my toothbrush and towel several times already. Why does he only play tricks on me? I comforted him. Perhaps Uncle Quinn isn't used to living in a small space. And maybe he used to have servants, so he hasn't adapted yet. My true feelings were different. You're not the only one affected. It's just that if he uses your mother's things, she doesn't notice. But outwardly, I remained calm. Men sharing a few things, what's the big deal? Just bear with it a little. After all, it doesn't concern me. All my personal belongings were kept in my bedroom, only brought out when needed. Mr. Quinn couldn't touch them. I did this because of Madame Lan. In the past, when my shampoo was in the shared bathroom, she often, mistakenly, used it, whether intentionally or not, to disgust me. From then on, I moved all my personal items back to my room, not giving her the chance to make mistakes anymore. Back then, Julian even blamed me. You're both women, what's wrong with accidentally using a little? Mom just came to the city and isn't used to the lifestyle here, don't overreact. Now, I used those very words to shut him up. This boomerang finally came back to hit him squarely in the face. Julian also complained to Madame Lan several times, but she completely dismissed it. In her eyes, accidentally using someone else's toothbrush, wearing their underwear, or forgetting to flush the toilet after using it were all perfectly normal things because she herself had done them. Before, I was the one who suffered, but Julian didn't care. Now it was his turn to taste it, while Mr. Quinn's filthy habits didn't affect me at all because I had learned how to prevent them from Madame Lan herself. I had long since found ways to cope, but recently, Madame Lan's behavior truly made me suffer quite a bit. To quickly rekindle her feelings with Mr. Quinn, Madame Lan put in her utmost effort. Most noticeably, she often wore revealing clothes around the house and made suggestive gestures. How to describe it? If those images were posted online, her account would definitely be immediately banned. Madame Lan's efforts also bore fruit. Mr. Quinn spoke sweet words without reservation. My darling, meeting you is the greatest blessing of my life. Before, I always regretted that heaven didn't grant me a true soulmate. Only after meeting you did I realize all that waiting was for a better encounter. In this life, I will only love 3 people. The first is you, the second is also you, and the last is still you. I have walked many paths, seen many sceneries, but I only want to be with one person for the rest of my life. Mr. Quinn said these words without embarrassment in front of others, hitting me, who happened to be passing by, with a double blow. However, after nearly 2 months together, Mr. Quinn still showed no signs of having money, making both Madame Lan and Julian anxious. So, they held another meeting, changed their strategy, and decided to bring in an antagonist to speed up the story. The antagonist was Auntie Liu, Madame Lan's best friend, who used to brag about finding a young, rich man, but actually lied about everything. This time, Madame Lan planned to take Mr. Quinn to meet Auntie Liu to show him off. Following Auntie Liu's usual style, she would definitely show off her expensive clothes, then criticize Madame Lan's cheap attire. At that exact moment, Mr. Quinn would step in to defend her and gift her a house, a car, and branded items to help her save face. There was no need to arrange anything with Auntie Liu beforehand. She just needed to act like her true self. But the result of the meeting was mixed, half joyful, half worried. The joy was that the young, rich man Auntie Liu brought was exposed as a professional con artist who tricked women. He was truly a gigolo. The worry was that this truth was revealed because Mr. Quinn and the gigolo got into a fight. It turned out that one of Mr. Quinn's former patrons had been stolen by that gigolo. The two already had an old grudge. During the meeting, Madame Lan and Auntie Liu started comparing their respective partners. Seeing himself about to lose, Mr. Quinn lost his temper and rushed into a fight with the gigolo. Madame Lan couldn't bear to see her dream of becoming a CEO's wife shattered, so she also rushed into the fray, beating Mr. Quinn's face black and blue. Still not satisfied, Madame Lan called the police to accuse Mr. Quinn of fraud, claiming he deceived her emotionally and romantically. Mr. Quinn indignantly shouted, "What did I trick you about?" Madame Lan boldly replied, "You said you were a food delivery driver, and disguised CEOs often say that too. You said you didn't know how to do housework. Isn't that what a rich young master would say? Your demeanor is also too outstanding. One look and it's clear you grew up in luxury." Hearing this, even the police couldn't help but ask, "Anything else?" Madame Lan said, "Isn't that enough?" Madame Lan's accusations shattered Mr. Quinn's illusion completely. He thought he had found a living credit card who truly loved him, but instead, he was seen as nothing more than a credit card. So, Mr. Quinn refused to give up, demanding compensation for being beaten by Madame Lan. Of course, Madame Lan refused to pay, and as a result, she was detained for 15 days. The first time, her high-flying idea of CEO loves cleaner landed her in jail for 5 days. The second time, disguised CEO loves simple woman sent her back to jail for another 15 days. This time, Madame Lan was disheartened for 20 days, but then she recovered with renewed vigor. She seriously learned her lesson, vowing to rise where she fell. Her new plan was to transform herself into a universally adored woman and then find a real CEO. No more playing with disguised CEOs, as they were too easy to be fooled by. More importantly, she had just become obsessed with a new short film, Crazy CEO Met on the Street, about a real CEO, and Madame Lan began to devise a plan to transform herself into a universally adored woman, plastic surgery. Honestly, I thought the money Madame Lan spent on those short films was a waste. The bizarre things she did to pursue a CEO were more entertaining than the films themselves. As for the plastic surgery money, she intended to make Julian pay. After all, the demolition compensation had already been transferred. Now, Julian was well off. "Julian, dear, this money won't be wasted. If I become beautiful and marry a rich husband, you'll benefit too, right?" I couldn't help but say, "Mom, if you don't know how to use idioms, don't use them randomly. What's dogs and chickens ascend to heaven together?" Julian argued poorly, stammering for a long time without saying anything coherent, but he was clearly persuaded by his mother's words. Madame Lan even carefully introduced Julian to all the CEO dramas she was obsessed with. After watching them, Julian also became severely poisoned. As a result, he agreed to pay for his mother's plastic surgery. But life is not like the movies. Before she even got on the operating table, Madame Lan met the Mr. Roy of her life. This Mr. Roy was truly dashing. He claimed to be the same age as Madame Lan, but outwardly he looked like Julian's brother. His name was Azengiaro Yuanju, and he claimed to be a descendant of royalty, a prince in ancient times. He said he was an overseas Chinese who returned to the country, had no children, and currently lived off his ancestral inheritance, which included antiques and calligraphy, so he could be considered to have some wealth. He recounted that in his childhood, due to poverty, he lived a very hard life. At that time, a little girl never looked down on him, constantly encouraging him to overcome difficulties, and that girl was Madame Lan. Both Madame Lan and Julian believed him wholeheartedly, thinking that heaven had finally answered their prayers, but they understood nothing about themselves. Madame Lan had no connection to the words kindness, and Julian understood nothing about his mother. One look at this man, and I knew he definitely had problems. He was either a fake CEO with his own agenda, or someone Madame Lan had once harmed, now returning for revenge. When he advised Madame Lan not to have plastic surgery, saying he loved her current appearance, I immediately determined he intended to swindle money. Because if he were sincere, he wouldn't worry about her getting surgery. Instead, he was afraid Madame Lan spending money would reduce his future opportunities to extract funds. If he truly wanted revenge, he should have urged her to get beautified. Because at Madame Lan's age, going to small clinics for surgery carried an extremely high risk of medical accidents. Even though the goddess of love seemed to shine upon her, Madame Lan still insisted on marrying a CEO who had money, no deal. This time, she became wiser, proposing to visit the CEO's house to see the villa, luxury cars, and antique calligraphy. These things truly moved her. When she heard the CEO say he wanted to leave all his assets to Julian as inheritance, Julian was also moved. At this point, the mother and son were still dreaming, so I immediately put divorce on my agenda. While waiting for the demolition compensation to be transferred, I didn't sit idle. I monitored Julian's behavior, even checking his phone messages. Finally, I caught him red-handed with evidence of adultery. I had suspected for a long time that the amount of money he claimed to have lost in investments was too large. It turned out he was using it to support his mistress. His lover lived right in our residential area, a single mother. I had bumped into her a few times. I never expected the enemy to be right next to me. Indeed, the most dangerous place is often the safest. I took the evidence of adultery to Julian and straightforwardly proposed a divorce. Marital assets would be split equally, and I calculated very carefully. During our marriage, you spent a considerable amount of money on that vixen named Daisy Chen. That's joint property. You gave it to someone else without my consent, so I have the right to reclaim it. Therefore, when dividing the assets, that money must also be included. Julian panicked. Kiera, haven't we always lived well together? Don't worry, in my heart, you're always the most important person. Daisy Chen is just a mistress. How can she compare to you? In ancient times, she could only be a concubine, someone who couldn't even sit at the main table. So why would I need to bother comparing with her? I said. I'm not comparing myself to her, I'm settling accounts with you. I can't stand sharing a husband with someone else. Julian became agitated. Kiera, why are you so narrow-minded? I'm with Daisy Chen because she has a good personality. She never opposes my decisions. If your personality were half as good as Daisy Chen's, would I need to go out and find someone else? I laughed angrily. Oh, Julian, you can still rationalize this. I work to support you, and then you take the money I earn to support your mistress. Others only criticize after they've eaten, but you start criticizing the moment you pick up the bowl. Julian, in short, I don't agree to this divorce. If you don't nod your head, don't dream of divorcing. I stated bluntly, Julian, you should know that besides divorce by agreement, there's also divorce through the courts. Even if the court doesn't rule the first time, it certainly will the second time. I'm determined and I'm not afraid to wait no matter how long it takes. Julian scoffed. Then you just wait, Kiera. I'll say the same thing in court. The stalemate made me anxious. My claim of not afraid to wait was just a bluff I put up in front of Julian. Every day the divorce was delayed, the less money I would receive. That demolition compensation would be squandered by him sooner or later, especially now that that fake CEO had also jumped into the fray. It was quite possible that by then, I wouldn't just miss out on asset division, but also have to shoulder his debts. I truly couldn't wait any longer. But it was okay. He had his tricks and I had my ways. I sought out Daisy Chen, Julian's mistress. I told her, I know everything about you and Julian. I've also found evidence of the money he's spent on you over the years. I'm giving you 1 week to return that money, otherwise I'll call the police. I also added, when I first found out, I was furious and just wanted a divorce immediately. But on second thought, all men are like that. If I divorced, I might not find someone better. Anyway, Julian has money, and my mother-in-law is about to marry into high society, so all the money will eventually be mine. I'm telling you now, from now on, I'll manage all the household money, so don't expect to get another penny from him. I said, it's a good thing Julian didn't agree when I hot-headedly demanded a divorce, or I'd be regretting it now. Daisy Chen was furious and said, just you wait, my plan won't succeed. Watching her walk away, I secretly cheered her on. Go for it. You must persuade Julian to sign the divorce papers. Sure enough, Daisy Chen didn't disappoint me. The very next day, Julian agreed to go with me to the authorities to process the divorce. He even said, leaving me is the biggest loss of your life. I'm about to strike it rich. I had a good idea of how Daisy Chen had managed to scare him. Although the divorce procedures would only be finalized in another month, I was worried he would be swindled out of his money by someone else during that time, so I proposed dividing the assets first and transferring my share separately. Julian, still dreaming of getting rich, didn't object at all and happily transferred my share of the money. I was glad I made the decision in time. Not long after, the fake CEO proposed auctioning off some antiques, but required a deposit of 3 million yuan. He claimed he didn't have enough cash and wanted to borrow money from Madame Lan, promising that after the sale, he would use the profits as a betrothal gift. Madame Lan hesitated slightly when she heard about borrowing money. The swindler then said he would hand over all the remaining antiques to Madame Lan as collateral and asserted that their value was far greater than the amount she was lending. After discussing it with Julian, the mother and son decided this was a sure profit and agreed to the loan. If Madame Lan's mind hadn't been clouded by money and the fake CEO, she would have immediately noticed that the 3 million yuan he requested perfectly matched the demolition compensation. It was clear he had heard somewhere that Madame Lan had just received a large sum of money and thus targeted her. Madame Lan told him that because Julian had to give me 1.5 million yuan in the divorce, they currently only had 1.5 million yuan in hand. Only then did the swindler realize Madame Lan only had half the money, but since the net had been cast for so long, whether he caught a little or a lot, he had to pull it in now. So he told Madame Lan that he knew people at the auction house and could help reduce the deposit, asking for a little flexibility. Madame Lan was still in her pink dream and suspected nothing. The swindler said he would go to Hong Kong to handle the auction, returning in half a month, and promised to marry Madame Lan upon his return. I was incredibly grateful for this delaying tactic of his. Thanks to it, I managed to complete the divorce procedures with Julian in time. If Julian had realized he was completely broke, he would never have agreed to sign the divorce papers. Holding the divorce certificate in my hand, I finally felt at peace. Meanwhile, Madame Lan and Julian, unable to reach the CEO, began to worry. They went to a professional antique appraisal firm and discovered that the items he had put up as collateral were all fakes, collectively worth less than 10,000 yuan. They then rushed to the place where he claimed to live, only to find a film crew shooting there. It turned out the house was just a rented set for filming. At this moment, Madame Lan and Julian finally realized they had been conned. Madame Lan truly lost everything. Although she couldn't track down the swindler, I knew his whereabouts all along. I had hired someone to follow him. I deliberately leaked a bit of information to Madame Lan, of course, with a few modifications so she could find him. When she met the CEO again, Madame Lan forced him to return the money, but the money had long since been transferred overseas and could not be reclaimed. In a fit of extreme rage, Madame Lan took a fake antique vase and smashed it directly onto his head, killing him on the spot. As a result, Madame Lan was sentenced to life imprisonment, and Julian suddenly became penniless. No money, no family, no job. His mistress, Daisy Chen, had naturally fled early on, but Julian still hadn't given up hope. Recently, he watched a short film titled The Female CEO and Her Obedient Lover and felt inspired, so he decided to find a female CEO to turn his life around. Although he knew that manna doesn't fall from the sky, Julian believed the opposite. Based on his somewhat flabby physique and slightly aged face, he actually found a female CEO. Although Madame Lan's experience of being swindled should have been a lifelong lesson, Julian thought, I have nothing left to lose, so who could possibly trick me anymore? It wasn't until the female CEO said she wanted to take him on a trip to Europe, transiting through Southeast Asia, and Julian had his kidney removed that he realized, it turns out I still had something for people to trick me out of. Knowing my enemy didn't come to a good end, I felt at peace. From now on, my life will shine brightly, all on my own.